Okay, I forgot to set up the camera when I was working today. So this morning I decided to take care of thicknessing the ribs. When you get a maple back, usually they come with a set of ribs, of 3 ribs like this. They come to you at 2 millimeters thick, which is of course way too thick to bend. What usually people recommend is 1.2 millimeters, 1.1 millimeters. Some people even go down to 1.0 millimeters thick. And but you got to get it down from 2 millimeters. 2 millimeters, it doesn't bend at all. And so what I did, what some people do is they just totally use a hand plane and scrapers to do it by hand. But I have this thickness sander, so I thought, well, I'll use it. And that's what I've done in the past. But you do it very carefully. And so what you do is you can't just lay this down on the sanding belt, because the sanding belt isn't necessarily, it has a belt on it, so it's not consistent. And it would not necessarily give you a consistent sanding. And so what you do for a real thin piece of stock is you put it on a board. So I have a 3/4 inch scrap board that's a little bit longer than the rib. And you just put some double stick tape on the ends and you put this down. And so you're running really the 3/4 inch board through the thickness sander under the drum. And the board gives it that consistent surface as well. So you can sand evenly. And so what you do is you put this in the drum sander, you don't turn it on, and just by hand, you lower the sanding drum, say my hand was the drum, until it just barely touches the rib. And you check it by just moving the drum by hand. And you start there and run it through, and little by little, just very little bit at a time, you adjust the drum to go a little bit lower, and until you get, and every 2 or 3 passes, I check it. I take this off the board, and then I check it with the thickness caliper, and you check it like that to see what you've got. I want to get it down to 1.2 millimeters, and then I'll use a scraper to scrape the final surface down to 1.1, hopefully, because a sanded surface is not as good as a scraped surface for the flame. And so that's what I did today. And so as you see, this is at about 1.2. And what a difference, boy, look at this. See, that's how you can tell, you can feel it as it's getting thinner, how much easier it is. And even at 1.1, it'll be even easier to bend, hopefully without cracking. I did order a couple of extra sets of ribs, even though I have all the ribs necessary. I have 3 ribs, which is usually what you need. But inevitably, I end up cracking some of the ribs, usually the C-bouts, which are really, quite a curve. So that's what I did today. And so these are at about 1.2 millimeters thick, but they have a nice looseness to it. And at 1.1, it'll be even nicer. At one point, I don't know if I've ever done a violin with just 1 millimeter thick, but there are some people that do that. Usually they recommend 1.2, but I found that 1.2 is even a bit too stiff. 1.1 or 1.0 is much better. So that's what I did today. I forgot to film it. I wasn't thinking. And so I'm just filming the result. So those will be ready for, it's going to be a while, because all I have right now is yesterday I kind of rough shaped the blocks and glued them on with a dot of Tite Bond. And so by 2 p.m. today, it will have cured for 24 hours, which is the best. But Titebond is strong. I mean, that's not going anywhere, I hope. So the next step will be actually, I'm going to use the scraper to scrape these down to 1.1, I hope. And then I'll go back to the blocks and start after 2 o'clock, when it's been 24 hours. I'm going to use this sanding table that I have here to sand down the blocks to their almost final measurements. The top block at the end will be 29 millimeters tall, so I usually go 29.5, a little bit taller, or even 30. And then the tail block, the final measurement is 31. And so I'll go 31.5 or 32. Because later on you're doing more sanding once you get the ribs on and the linings on. So that's what I'll be doing. The only part that you really have to do adjusting is the back side of the blocks, because the top is just basically flat. You just sand it flat. The top is always flat, but the back has the incline. So say this is the back of the violin, it's going to slope down from back to front by 2 millimeters. Okay, so that's it. After that's done, and the blocks are all the right dimensions, then I start actually cutting the C-bout corners. I draw the corners on, and then I cut with the gouges and chisels, just the C-bout inside corner curve. You don't cut these till later. Okay, so that's it. I'm back in the saddle again, and it's kind of fun to have something specific to do. Bye-bye.